This is a scary experience that I had when I used to work at Starbucks. I was an employee there several years ago and worked there for almost 2 years. This was towards the end of my time working there. One time I was working a closing shift. We closed at 8 p.m. every night, and generally I would stay for a few minutes after finishing tasks. On this night, for the last few hours that we were open, I was working with one other coworker. Things were pretty quiet for most of the day, but when it got to be about 6 p.m., it was especially quiet. We had very few customers come in, and during the 7 o'clock hour, had nobody at all. Our location was not in that busy of an area, but a lot of people would still go there during the morning. Usually, a few people would come inside and work on their laptops or whatever throughout the afternoon and night. Not this time, though, which I did not have a problem with. We were able to start cleaning and stuff a little bit early, and it became apparent that we probably wouldn't get any more customers for the rest of the night. At maybe 7:45 or so, I told my coworker that she could go home and I would finish up with everything. I knew that she was in school and had a lot of homework to do. So she left, and then it was just me. At probably 7:55, I went into the back room. I was doing some of the normal tasks that I would do when we closed. I spent about 2 or 3 minutes in the back room area, and then I was going to go back out. We had a somewhat large swinging door with a small window in it that separated behind the counter from the back room area. As I was about to walk through, though, I just barely noticed something through the window that made me stop. There appeared to be somebody behind the counter. This was really strange. I hadn't heard anybody come inside or anything, and it wasn't my coworker. It was a man, and he was somewhat tall, or at least a lot taller than I am. At first, he looked like he was wearing a hat, but when he turned a little, I saw that it was a mask, a full ski mask, and he was near the cash register. At that point, I realized that this guy was probably trying to rob us. I quickly moved back from the door and went farther into the back room. I felt like an idiot for not just locking the doors and closing early. He entered when I was in the back and didn't even notice. As I walked farther back there, I suddenly heard footsteps walking towards the door where I was. We had a decent-sized back area, but there's still not a whole lot of space there. Mostly, it was filled with various boxes of all sizes and extra supplies such as ingredients and cups. The first thing that I thought to do was to find a large box in the back corner. Being the small female that I am, I jumped inside of it while trying not to make any noise. I'm barely 5 feet tall and fit inside just fine. Then I grabbed another large empty box on the shelf next to me and covered myself with it. However, the man did not immediately enter the back room. I was expecting the door to open for the entire time that I was getting in the box, but it didn't. I'm not sure what he did, but he remained on the other side of the door for a little while. I had my phone in my pocket still, luckily, and I took it out and called the police. Probably 30 seconds after I called, I heard the door to the back room open. I hung up the call with the police prematurely as soon as I heard that. I didn't want the guy to hear anything, even though I had been talking as quietly as I could. All that I had been able to say was the Starbucks location that I was at and that I thought I was being robbed. The operator was asking me a question when I hung up the phone. I hoped that the police would still come and arrive quickly. When the man entered the back room, he walked in and then seemed to stop. Just moments later, I heard him walking closer to me. As he did, he mumbled a few things that I couldn't make out. My heart was racing like crazy, and I hoped that he wouldn't find me. Now, I was hidden pretty good, but it was still a terrifying situation to be in. He got within probably 10 feet of me and then turned and walked back. A short time later, I heard the door behind the counter open and close again. After that, I didn't hear a whole lot. I stayed hidden where I was and didn't dare leave. I texted some friends and family and was in the box for maybe 30 minutes. Then I heard some more noises coming from inside. Before long, I realized that it was the police. I found out that the guy had left before they got there, unfortunately. I told him everything I could, and we looked at the security footage as well. The man entered when I was in the back and went right behind the counter for the cash register. He was wearing a ski mask the whole time, so it was impossible to tell his identity. He stole everything that was in the register and then left. After talking with police, I was finally able to go home. I found out later that the man who robbed the store was caught. I didn't want to work any closing shifts for a while afterwards, though. I think I worked there for another month or two before I quit. Sometimes I wonder if the guy was watching the store from outside and saw me go into the bathroom. I really have no idea though. Either way, it was good timing that I wasn't back there when he entered. I wouldn't want to know what would have happened. This happened not too long ago. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was in the city. I work downtown and take the bus there from my apartment. So after work one day, I did a little bit of shopping and then was heading to the bus stop. I really had to use the bathroom, probably because I'd been drinking a lot of water. At first, I was just going to try to wait until I got home, but I then realized that I really didn't want to wait that long. As I walked down the city sidewalk, I looked out for any business that would probably have a restroom that I could use. It's hard sometimes to find a bathroom to use in the city because there's so many people. Many businesses don't have public restrooms. Others make you buy something or get a key from behind the counter. It was about 6 p.m. or so the sidewalks were really busy. I soon saw a Starbucks coffee shop up ahead. I figured there would be a good bet that they had a public restroom. I headed for the Starbucks and then walked inside. When I got in, I saw that it was very busy. Lots of people stood around or sat at tables. There was probably 3 or 4 people in line and somebody ordering as well. I headed straight for the back where the bathrooms were. I don't go to Starbucks very often, but I've been there enough to know where the bathrooms are. When I got to the back, I saw the bathrooms, but you needed a code to get in. That was disappointing. I didn't want to bother asking an employee for the code. Perhaps I would have to buy something to get it, which I didn't want to do. Plus, there was a line of people waiting to order, so I decided to just leave. But as I started to head out, there was a guy that made eye contact with me. He appeared to be just kind of standing around. He looked as though he knew me or recognized me from something. However, I didn't know who he was at all. It seemed a little bit strange, but maybe I looked like somebody that he knew or something. The man was about average height, had light brown hair and glasses. I walked past him and started to leave the Starbucks. When I did, I noticed the man leave behind me. I didn't think much of it though. I turned to the left and walked down the sidewalk in search of another place that may have a restroom. I do remember that as I was walking down the sidewalk, the guy was walking behind me at a distance. It did seem a little bit strange. Eventually though, maybe 2 or 3 minutes later, I saw a hotel. I decided to walk inside of the lobby and see if they had a bathroom. When I went inside, I couldn't believe it when the guy behind me also entered the hotel. I walked through the lobby and found that they did in fact have a bathroom that I could use. I went inside and was not followed in by the man. I was in the bathroom for maybe a minute and then left to see the guy just kind of standing around. It was almost like he was waiting for me. I thought about asking him if he was following me or what he was doing, but I didn't. Instead, I just walked past him to leave. When I did, he seemed to follow me yet again. I left the hotel, then went back onto the sidewalk. I kept walking and passed by the Starbucks again. Believe it or not, I was still being followed. I tried not to pay attention to the guy and also walked faster. There were still quite a few other people out on the sidewalk. I tried my best to blend in with them, and I walked fast and passed people left and right. At last, I made it to the bus stop. I was just on time for a bus to arrive very shortly. I looked around as it was now pretty dark out. I didn't see the guy, which made me feel a lot better. I figured that he had probably stopped following me at some point. Soon the bus arrived and I boarded it and found an open seat towards the back. There was a lot of other people on the bus and more continued to get on, but I didn't see the man at all. The bus soon left and I rode it for maybe 10 or 15 minutes until it arrived at my stop. I lived pretty close to the city, but in an apartment. After I got off of the bus, I have to walk a few blocks. It takes a little bit more than 5 minutes. When we reached my stop, I got up and headed off the bus. After leaving, I noticed someone get off a couple of seconds behind me. I thought to myself, there's no way that's him. But when I looked behind me, it was. The same guy had been on the bus. I hadn't noticed him at all. Somehow, he must have blended in with the crowd of people, and before that, been able to keep up with me on the sidewalk. I couldn't believe it. I was so freaked out that I just started running. I sprinted as fast as I could all the way to my apartment. I didn't even bother to look back the entire time. When I made it to my apartment building, I quickly used my key fob to get inside. I made sure that the door closed behind me, and I didn't see the guy as I did so. I went up to my apartment on the second floor, and luckily did not see the man again after that. That was several weeks ago. I don't know who the guy was or why he followed me. I'm hoping that he didn't see what building I lived in, and I don't know when he stopped following me as I was running. I'm just hoping that he never comes back. I currently work at Starbucks, and I've been working there for a little over a year. This is something that took place last summer. It was a crazy experience, to say the least. It all happened one very busy morning. I had been working since we opened, but at this point, it was probably a little bit after 8 a.m. Lots of people were coming in and ordering, and there were 5 of us working trying to keep up. We were doing a pretty good job, I thought. Some people order Starbucks online and pick it up, or use things like DoorDash or Uber Eats. Between those and the people ordering in the store, there were several drinks on the counter. I remember seeing probably 5 drinks at least, or a couple of food items that we sold, such as breakfast sandwiches. A few people were standing around waiting for their orders to be done as well. We didn't have a separate shelf for mobile or online orders at the time, which we have since added, so every order that was done just got placed on the counter. I remember as I put a drink down on the counter, I noticed one guy walking in. He had long dark hair and a beard that looked unkempt. I turned around to keep working as we were very busy. A short time later, another order got added to the counter, and a couple of people had picked theirs up. I saw the man was now standing nearby. Probably 5 minutes later, I added another drink to the counter, which probably had about 6 or 7 things on it. That's when I saw the man walk up. At first, I assumed that he had ordered something online and was picking it up. But after the guy got right up to the counter, he took his arm and knocked everything over. He used his arm like a brush, and within seconds, every single drink that was on there got knocked over and spilled. It was a mess, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Afterwards, the man took a step back and started laughing like a maniac. A bunch of people around him were giving dirty looks. Somebody asked him why he did that. Other than that, the place quickly became dead silent. He just kept laughing as if it was the funniest thing ever. I was angry, but I knew that I could not lose my temper. For some reason, though, I took it upon myself to deal with this situation, probably because I was closest to the man. I took a few steps over to the guy, and he looked at me. Before I said anything, the man said to me, "What are you going to do about it?" It was as if he was very proud of what he had done. I asked him to just leave, please. The guy said no. I thought that the guy must be crazy or something. Some other people were telling him that he should leave, and he turned to them and started defending himself. I went back to help another order that we were finishing up. Then we were going to try to figure out everything that needed to be remade, but probably just about 30 seconds later, I heard the man moving closer. I looked and then saw him jumping over the counter. I walked over to him and told him to stop. The man was now facing me and standing behind the counter where it was for employees only. I tried telling the man to leave, but clearly he wasn't going to listen. He then grabbed something off the shelf. It was a container of caramel or something, and then he threw it at me. It didn't really hurt, but I was afraid of what the man would do next. He seemed very unpredictable. Somebody shouted to call the police. The man then charged at me. He wasn't very big, and I was several inches taller than him. He ran into me, but with not a whole lot of force. It didn't knock me over or anything. I put my hands up to stop him, and then he fell over. He crashed into the counter behind us and to the right. I remember when he was on the ground, he had yelled at me that he was going to sue me for assaulting him. A lot of people started leaving the building, and nobody was trying to get coffee anymore. When the man stood back up, I pleaded with him to leave. He refused and tried to charge at me again. I grabbed the man by his arms and tried to force him to leave. I walked with him out and around the counter. I heard one of my coworkers say that the police were on the way. Everybody who was inside the restaurant left, and as I finally made it out from behind the counter, the man broke free from me. Obviously, I wasn't going to try to tackle him or anything. He then ran over to a table and stood behind it. All of my coworkers left the building, as well as all of the customers. The police got there about 2 minutes later, and we let them handle it. They were able to get the man out and leave the building. We ended up being closed for the next hour, and finally opened a while later. That was by far the craziest thing that ever happened to me while working there. This happened a few years ago. I used to work at Starbucks and was a part-time employee. This was during my first year in college, and I was back home for the summer. I was good friends with several of my coworkers, and I enjoyed working there. One thing that happened, though, was really scary. It took place one night when I was closing. I was working with two of my coworkers, Sarah and Emily. Things were pretty busy until it started to get late. At that point, Sarah got off and went home. It was just Emily and me for the last couple hours, which was fine. Not that many people came in, and I believe that we closed at 8:30. So Emily and I worked until then, and then we closed up. I remember that after we locked the doors, we were doing some things that we were supposed to after closing. It was at this time when suddenly we heard a knocking noise coming from the back door. That door was only really used for deliveries and of course was locked. It was very strange because we knew that nobody was supposed to be there right now. The knocking continued and then got louder. It turned into the sound of somebody banging on the back door loudly. Emily asked if we should open it and see who it was, but I told her not to. I had a bad feeling about it. I really wanted to know who was doing that though, and why. It went on for probably about 2 minutes straight and then finally stopped. We both felt relieved, but not much longer, probably about a minute later, it started up again. The bangs on the back door continued. We had no way of looking out to that area unless we left the Starbucks and went around to look. I didn't think that would be a good idea though, and neither did Emily. We just kind of waited inside for it to stop. We looked out the main windows at the front of the building, but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Just a quiet parking lot with only Emily's car and my car in it. The pounding on the back door kept going for probably like 5 minutes. Then, at last, it stopped for good. Emily and I finished up our work and then went to leave. We looked out the windows before, making sure that nobody was out there or anything. We also waited a little while extra just to be safe. Then we left Starbucks and headed to our vehicles in the parking lot. We parked next to each other, and it was a pretty short walk. However, the Starbucks was in a little bit of a quieter area, and the parking lot was also pretty dark. I just remember that when we had almost made it to our cars, hearing a noise coming around the side of the building, we both looked at the same time. That's when we saw a man coming around the corner and heading in our direction. Emily quickly got inside of her car, and I followed and got inside mine right after. Emily's car was closer to the guy, and I remember hearing her engine start and she quickly backed away. After she did, I saw the guy walking through the parking lot and heading in my direction. I don't remember much at all of what he looked like. It was really dark and hard to tell details. I quickly left and drove out of there. The man remained in the parking lot. After that, I'm not sure what happened. I don't know what he did. He didn't break into Starbucks or anything, and no other occurrences like that happened to me when I was working there. I still don't know what the guy was doing. I'm assuming that he was the same person that was banging on the back door. I think he was trying to get us to open it, but I'm glad that we didn't. I used to work at home for my job, and when I did that, I would walk to Starbucks every day. There was a Starbucks that I could walk to, and it would take about 20 minutes. So I would wake up and then make the walk to Starbucks and then head back before work. It allowed me to get my steps in and also get my morning coffee. Well, I did this just about every day for probably 2 or 3 months until something caused me to stop. It was a regular weekday, and I left my house at 7 a.m. for the daily walk to Starbucks. The walk there went fine. I would take sidewalks the entire way there and back. Most of the roads were usually pretty quiet, but the 2 roads closest to Starbucks were a little bit busier. After I got to Starbucks, I ordered my usual coffee and then waited inside until it was done. The Starbucks was somewhat busy with it being the morning, but as I waited, I just browsed around on my phone. Soon my coffee was done, and I took it and started to walk back. Now, when I was about halfway home, I was walking on the left side of the road on the sidewalk. The street was a 1-lane residential street, and there was a mixture of apartment buildings and houses. I remember that as I was walking, this car came down the street in the same direction that I was going. It then slowed down, and I expected it to pass me, but it didn't. It was a gray sedan and seemed sort of old. I'm not much of a car person though, so I don't know the exact year, make, or model. I noticed that the car was traveling at around the same speed that I was walking. I didn't know why though. None of the people that I knew had that kind of a car, so it couldn't be one of my friends or something. As the car continued to go at around the same speed as me, I felt sort of nervous. After maybe 30 seconds of this, the car actually started to pull over to the side of the road and in front of me. I wanted to get away from them. I had just passed a sidewalk that went between 2 apartment buildings to my left. As the car was pulling over, I turned around and went down that sidewalk. The car would have no way of following me down there. I just hoped that whoever was driving wouldn't get out and go after me or something. When I walked a decent ways down that sidewalk between buildings, I didn't hear anybody walking behind me or anything. I stayed there for a little while and then went back. When I did, nobody was there and the car was gone. After that, I kept on going with my walk home. I made it back okay and didn't really know what to make of the whole situation. I was just glad that the car didn't continue to follow me. So for the next few days, I continued to walk to Starbucks every morning. That one incident didn't stop me. I didn't even consider not going. However, sometime during the next week, I saw the car again. It was almost the exact same situation as before. I was walking down the same sidewalk on the same street. I saw the car again slowly drive a little bit past me. I thought to myself, not this again. When I saw it, I sped up and started walking quickly. The car maintained speed with me again. I looked over to see who was driving, but couldn't tell from my angle. Coming up ahead was the same sidewalk between buildings that I had gone down before. When I got there, I went down that same sidewalk again as I did before. I walked almost all the way down and then went back, hoping to see that the car was gone again like before. When I got to the corner and looked around though, the car was still there. It was parked on the side of the road. I didn't see anybody around it on the sidewalk though. Still, I didn't want to take any chances, so I walked back down the sidewalk between the buildings. From there, I took another way home. It took a while longer, but I didn't see the car again for the rest of the day. Now, after that, I really should have stopped walking to Starbucks every morning. But I didn't. I kept going. And the very next day, I walked to Starbucks without a problem. On the way back, I was very careful to watch out for the car. In fact, I took a separate way home from the road that I had seen it on before. Eventually, I was able to make it back to my street and to my house. When I got inside of my house, literally seconds after I closed the door, I saw the car. It was driving down my usual quiet street. It was traveling at a very slow speed. The car did not stop at my house though, but kept going. When it went out of sight, I kept watching out the window. About a minute later, it came back, but once more it kept going past my house. I was careful so that whoever was driving wouldn't see me through the window. After that, I finally stopped walking to Starbucks. Luckily, I haven't seen the car since. I have a few theories of who it was, but I don't know exactly. I think it might have been somebody who saw me at Starbucks, maybe multiple times. It also could have been a random person. They must have somehow followed me to my street, but I don't believe they know which house was mine. I feel lucky that nothing bad happened.